If you're a family that's thinking about traveling through Southeast Asia, you're going to want to watch this video all the way through to the end because we think we found the perfect starting point for all families. And that is... So I'm Jimmy.
And I'm Pauline.
And we've been traveling full-time now for over a year. And we believe that this place is the best single place to start any full-time travel adventure. And that is Malaysia. Trust me when we say we are speaking from experience. There is an adjustment to travel around Southeast Asia if you haven't done it before. And you want to go to a place that feels like home. It's kind of like Southeast Asia on training wheels.
It is one of the locations we have found that has the highest population of people that speak English and want to speak English to you.
Because English is taught widely in the school system, it's actually very easy to get around. That's not saying the rest of Southeast Asia doesn't speak English very well, because there's a lot of countries in Southeast Asia that do, like the Philippines, for instance. As a person that's coming from a native English-speaking country, it's quite a good way to start off the journey and practice that Southeast Asian English fusion that ends up happening in Southeast Asia in a place where English is less of a barrier, because you can go to some countries like Vietnam specifically. Now, does that mean they shouldn't be speaking English? No, it's Vietnam. You should be learning Vietnamese when you go there. But it does make it a lot easier when you land in the country and people can kind of speak the language around you.
And we found it just in Grabs. Your Grab driver wants to chat to you in English to help them learn the English as well. With the English language, it is then also written in English. So like turning up to an airport, a lot of things are written easily in English because they get a lot of tourists. A lot of people speak English. But you go to Vietnam, they write a lot in their alphabet and not a lot in
So English is really good, which makes it a really good place to land if you're landing in Southeast Asia. Get used to Southeast Asian culture. Don't have any of them faux pas moments where you say the wrong thing.
Who are you?
You.
No, not me, you.
Yes, I am you.
The next reason we think that Malaysia is the best kicking off point for the rest of Southeast Asia is because of the diversity of cuisine and just how good the food is there.
So we've spoken to a lot of travelers and a lot of people with kids, and a lot of kids are picky eaters. Like the kids are just picky in general, right? But traveling in KL we found was a lot easier to get a cuisine that they would maybe fancy. Our kids are very simple. They, rice dish, noodle dish, anything quite plain is good for them. They're all right with spice, but not too much. We found KL and Malaysia to be the easiest to order them a dish.
Yeah, because again, going back to the English, all the menus are in English.
Yeah.
Generally, you can sort of work out what it's supposed to be because it is so similar to English, the language. Just the general fusion of cuisine in Malaysia is so Chinese inspired, Indian inspired, and obviously Malaysian inspired as well. And there's also obviously an English mix in there as well, that you can generally find good analogs for what your kids like at home. So if your kids at home like, say for instance, chicken nuggets and fries, you'll be able to find a chicken and potato dish that will be very similar, that will suit them very well.
Our kids loved chicken and rice. Chicken and rice in Malaysia, you can get as steamed chicken, roast chicken, or fried chicken, and it always came with rice and a soup, and they loved it. They thought it was just amazing. It didn't matter what chicken they had, they were chicken and rice, and it always came with cucumber on the side as well, so that was even better.
The transportation system in Malaysia is very mature.
It is such a simple system. Like, it's easy to get a ticket. It goes everywhere. Like, every city has a good public transport system, whether it's a train or a bus. You can get between cities really easily. You can purchase a train or a bus ticket, and they're only a couple of hours away from each other. So we just found the system very user-friendly. We talked about being an English-spoken country. Everything is written in English. You can buy a ticket in English. You know exactly where you're going from point A to point B without getting lost too much.
And coming from Western countries where public transport is generally good, it's a bit of a rude shock to go to a place like the Philippines, just through the fact that it's 7,000 islands. It actually can be quite difficult to get around because you can't build a train that goes from one island to the next island.
Yeah.
So it's buses, ferries, things like that. Whereas in Malaysia, on the peninsula especially, the whole country is connected by a train. So you can get to the East Coast, to the West Coast, to Penang, to all over Malaysia by just using the public transport. And we found it to be very modern and very efficient, especially in KL.
And then if it doesn't have a train, it will always be connected by bus.
Grabs are really cheap, which is
Yep.
which is Malaysia's version of Uber.
Uber.
If you don't necessarily want to take a bus, there's always a Grab around the corner that's $5 or $6 Australian that will get you to pretty much anywhere you need to go.
And if you really need to, we found the purple beam scooters to be extremely cheap, and they are on every single corner. They are an electric scooter like you see here in Australia. You can get on and off, and a couple of dollars, stick your kid in front of you, off you go.
And I know Malaysia doesn't have the reputation for this, but we were blown away by the amount to do as a family. I know there's a lot of travelers that travel as a couple that maybe don't have kids that say that Malaysia is boring. I don't know if that's true. We're not a couple, we have kids. But as far as a family with children go, Malaysia is a fantastic place to visit from activity perspective.
Oh my gosh, you've got water park, theme park, museums,
Natural
caves, you've got the forest, you've got the beach, you've got islands, it has everything you can think of. And then even in KL itself, there you go and search like things to do in KL, and there is blog post after blog post, list after list of like 50, 100 things to do. You could spend weeks, a month.
It's like when someone designed Malaysia, they said, how can we make a place that's really awesome as a family? You know, the thing is, alcohol is expensive, so if you drink a lot, it's maybe not the place for you. But as a family, there's just so much to see and do. Nature, theme parks, like Pauline's saying, it's just got it all if you're there as a family. And that leads me on to the next thing, which is safety. Malaysia is an incredibly safe country as a family.
James actually had to go back to Australia at one point, and he left us in KL. So he left myself and the kids in Malaysia, in KL for, I think it was 5 or 6 days. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But I felt so safe. Like the kids and I would walk to the shopping centre. We'd walk to the food street at nighttime. Like we were walking back to our apartment and it was dark. And I had 2 kids, like 6 and 8 at the time. And I didn't feel safer. Like I can't express this to you that we were fine. Everyone said hello to us, like they just wanted to talk to the kid. Yeah, Malaysia is extremely.
There's a big myth out there that people think Australia is safer than a lot of countries in Southeast Asia. We haven't found it further from the truth. I felt more safer in Southeast Asia and Malaysia specifically. I felt more safer in Malaysia than I have in my hometown here in Australia.
Just the other day in daylight, like we were 5 o'clock, we went down to the beach here, the local beach, and there was a man, like he was drunk and he was laying in the park where there's a heap of kids, and he was screaming at the top of his lungs every few minutes, and it scared me. And the kids were like, what's going on, Mum? Dad, what's he doing?
If that was in Malaysia, that person wouldn't be screaming for very long. The police would have been called. They would have been moved on. By about 7:30, everything shuts down and the streets are dead quiet.
Yeah, everyone says that. They come to Australia and they can't even get dinner after 8 o'clock. Everything closes. You know, you go to Malaysia, you can get a bowl of noodles at any hour of the night. Doesn't matter where you are, there is always somewhere that is open. There's a convenience store on every corner. There's people out doing jobs during the night. It's a hype of activity, whereas Australia, everyone goes to bed.
And this comes into a play when you, say, for instance, go out and have a big day, have a big adventure, and it's like 9 o'clock at night and you've got to feed the children. In Malaysia, you can just go out to a local hawker market or hawker store.
7-Eleven.
Go and get something to eat, and you'll see other families around that are doing the same thing, which is really, really assuring from a safety perspective. Okay, so one of the other things we notice is that accommodation is really cheap, and it's a great base to fly to other Southeast Asian countries. You have AirAsia, you have Malaysia Airlines, you have a lot of low-cost carriers that fly out of Malaysia. And because of that, you can get to a lot of other countries in Southeast Asia really cheaply.
So one example was we were in Penang. Because Malaysia, you only get 90-day visas. We were in Penang and our 90 days was coming up. And I said to Jimmy, let's just fly somewhere out of Malaysia and then fly back in. Easy. Like, we can do this. So a flight from Penang to Singapore, I think for all 4 of us, was under $100 with luggage. So cheap to get flight.
And that's a really handy place to be, because if we were going to fly out of Australia to, say, the Philippines, it'd be a lot more.
Yeah.
Whereas Malaysia, for all of us to fly one way is less than $1,000.
You can't even get 2 people for that price to Melbourne or something like that. Like,
Right.
crazy.
Unreal. A lot of the condos in Malaysia have been designed for families. It wasn't even just KL. The whole of Malaysia had plenty of accommodation that was suitable for a family. Multiple bedroom condos with big pools and big outdoor areas in the condo complex, gyms, playground equipment. And I don't think we found a single place in Malaysia where we couldn't find suitable accommodation that was affordable.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, whether it was a condo, B&Bs, hotels, like, they've got every type of accommodation. Like, I was looking up Australia the other day, and a hotel you could not get for under $200 a night, whereas we were staying in luxury condo apartments for $50 with a gym and a pool and internet and everything included.
Westerners coming over to Malaysia, affordable for us because we have Australian dollars.
Yeah.
I understand if you live in Malaysia, it may not be as affordable right now.
Because when you go to somewhere like Malaysia, it's like cutting your teeth. You go there, you get all the apps sorted of Airbnb, Booking.com, Grab, like all of those apps. You get yourself sorted with all your accounts. You know how to search for everything. You know what you want. Like, you need to know what you want in accommodation to then have the best time. So it's really a good base to get yourself sorted so that you know what you want, where you want to go, what you want to do, how you travel, so that you can move through Southeast Asia easily and have a lot of fun.
You know, you can go to Malaysia, you can get the feel and the vibe of Southeast Asia and how it works, and then you can try the harder countries to travel through, like Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos, with confidence because you know what you're going to get into. And the worst thing you can do as a family is go to a country that's really difficult to get around in, that English isn't very good, that is difficult from a transport perspective, and really ruin the trip for you because you haven't adjusted to it. So Malaysia is the perfect mix between being in Southeast Asia and being affordable, but also having a lot of stuff that you'll be familiar with coming from a Western country that speaks English.
Like we're saying, full-time traveling is not an easy adjustment. Like, it will take you a good few weeks to get your bearings, to get your food sorted, like all those kinds of things that you do day in, day out at your normal residence. It's then very difficult to transfer that to another country that you've never been, or you've only just, maybe holidayed a little bit. Traveling through these countries is not like a holiday. It's kind of an in-between. It's like a lifestyle.
So guys, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with us? Do you agree that Malaysia is a great starting off point? Leave it in the comments below and help some other travelers out there. Also, if you haven't yet, we made this video right here on why we think Malaysia is the most underrated country on the planet. And we still think that to this day.
Yep.
And it's worth a watch. That video is here.